All right, today we're kind of doing a 2-for-1 video. We're going to talk about accessing cheap hardwoods or even free material for your shop, and also building a very DIY friendly, easy and relatively cheap serving tray that can be sold locally or given away as gifts, which is what I do with a lot of stuff around this time of year. So access to cheap hardwood. Seat bottoms from old chairs and cabinet doors are fantastic ways to access really great hardwood lumber. Thrifting, big box thrift stores with cabinet doors, Craigslist, Marketplace, things like that. Great way to get your hands on some maybe totaled cabinets, but the doors are great for hardwood resurrection. These seat bottoms on old chairs, if you take the upholstery off, oftentimes you find different hardwoods that were used as the template or the jig. So here we have hard maple and walnut. In my rough kind of millwork, whenever I intake materials like this, when I see a deal and I pick up an old cabinet for 10, 15 bucks, I bring it into the shop. The very first thing I do is get rid of the carcass, because normally it's particle board. Second thing I do is sterilize everything. And the third thing I do is start squaring up my material using a track saw, drywall square, and table saw. I try to get rid of the parts that are non-usable, either damaged or, in this case, mortised hinge cup holes. The seat kind of jig, I am cutting the notches back from the steel, getting rid of that. And once I've established a square corner, now you're going to bring it over to your table saw. So back to the trays. I have predetermined a width here of around 9.5 inches. And because I have a square corner to work with for my track saw, I'm just going to run all my material through on the length and also the width, meaning a cross cut. In terms of a push stick, I am a big proponent of using my hands. I am more comfortable with it, especially for larger products and cuts, but that is up to you. I recommend doing what is safest for you and the method you have the most confidence in, not ego, because that can get you hurt. Once I do that, what I'm going to do is rip down risers for the tray. So the larger cut was the actual board part of the tray, and now I'm cutting the feet of which the tray will rest on. Once I have this material all lined out, I'm going to give it a really good sanding. This is 80 grit on the Rotex on grind mode, which you can use any sander in the world, but you definitely want to get all of the old particulate and finish off. Once that happens, I spray them again and clean them down. And I'm going to stack them with their own material so that airflow can come through evenly and consistently as I kind of pop the grain. The next step here is going to make your marks for the pre-drilled holes, which will attach your feet to the bottom of the serving tray. I'm using a combination square and a pencil, arbitrarily picking my distance off the ends, but making sure the hole is centered. If you ever want to check center, just flip the combo square back and forth and it will guarantee that your hole is on point. If I could be using a drill press right here, I would, and if you have access to one, I would recommend it. It is way slower to do this by hand and way less accurate, especially drifting in and out of plumb and level to the surface of the leg. A drill press is just far superior than hand drilling. However, if it's what you got to get it done, go forth. Now, the 3/8 Forstner bit is so I can come back and plug the hole, and then I just pre-drill through that Forstner bit so my screw can go down into the lumber. Once I have all my holes pre-drilled, I'm going to attach the feet to the bottom of the serving tray. Combo square, again, is super helpful here to help me establish my distances off the edges and keep it consistent. One trick that I find very useful is down pressure and attaching one screw, and then re-establishing square using a speed square and slamming it up to the leg and then screwing in that final screw. Sometimes with wood glue it gets a little slippery. Something else to mention here, the wood glue I'm using is Titebond 3, which is excellent for water resistance, quote unquote waterproof. Definitely the surefire bet when working with cutting boards and serving trays. I clean my glue as I go because Titebond 3 does not like to sand out very easily. So there you have it. There is a built serving tray on these little risers. Now the risers, you can make any dimension, as can interchangeably so be the case with the actual serving tray. I put a little round over on everything just to ease the edge, especially, people grab and go with these things. You don't want it to be uncomfortable to touch. And then I hand break the bottom edge so the wood doesn't end up looking a little too thin. Now I'm using a flush cut bit here to get my plugs cut out. Honestly, a drill press is the way to go here. Super frustrating and it takes a lot of time. You can pick up one of these bits on Amazon. I'm not so sure I love the ones that are sold at big box stores. Once I do that, I drop glue in my Forstner bit hole. That's super easy. Then I just put the plugs in and I hammer them down. Now I actually interchange the walnut with the maple and the maple with the walnut just as a nice little accent. It does not bother me that they're not the same, especially because they complement each other and it's kind of a retro look. Arguable maneuver here using a multi-tool to flush cut. I don't care. It was fast, it was fun, it was easy, and I know I'm going to sand these things down. Do whatever method you want. I like speed. Fun little tip here, Flyhead cement is a fantastic waterproof adhesive that will lock in your flush cut plugs. Mineral oil, aka cutting board oil, whatever you want to use. I prefer not to put a poly or hardening finish on something that is going to be around food. So a disclaimer to any clients, friends, or family, and say, hey, you have to re-up this oil every so often, about once a month, to maintain them, depending on how much you wash them. Express how to care for these boards, and boom, you have serving trays made with very, very cheap, if not free lumber that you gathered from thrifting old furniture that you might not have otherwise thought even had components that were so good for projects like this. I'm happy with how they turned out. I'm very excited to do more projects like this, especially as we enter unknown economic times, which scare me to no end. Now, a couple key points here again. Serving trays can be any size or shape that you want. This method is a very DIY-friendly entry-level build that you can achieve with very minimal tooling. Skillsoft, that's all you had, drill, driver, and a sander. Having a table saw and a track saw is definitely helpful, but you don't have to have those things. They just kind of make it faster, especially when dimensioning the actual boards. A router is a nice touch, but if you don't have a router, just get a good sanding block and ease that edge yourself. Or if you're feeling frisky, get a little block plane and try and put on a chamfer the old school way. Key takeaways from the material aspect of it. Free materials, cheap materials. People can dog on this all day. I've got friends in the industry who make fun of me for collecting this stuff. I love reusing lumber that is healthy and good. I'm not a fan of barnwood specifically for the pesticides, chemicals, and infestations that can occur, especially when it's non-kiln dried and you introduce that into your home. However, something that's been in a cabinet, if it's good enough to be in your kitchen, it's good enough to be in your kitchen. Recycling and repurposing that lumber, to me, is totally okay, and that's a personal boundary I'm willing to experiment with, especially with giveaway products or projects for friends and family. I think the seat bottom, might be a little more rare of a find, but it's worth looking at. And when you're in these thrift stores, just flip the chair over. Oftentimes you'll see right on the bottom whether or not it's plywood, a composite, or a hardwood. The older the chair, the more likely it is it's hardwood. Feel no shame in taking it apart. You're giving it new life anyways, and it's better than sitting in a landfill. In terms of cabinets, you can ask around local builders too who have rejects or throwouts. And when you see remodels happen, even check the side of the curb so long as it hasn't been left out in the rain for too long. You don't want the nasties growing in it. But cabinet doors are such a great resource for hardwoods. I think it's an often underlooked resource for all of us, especially DIYers and people who want to build more on the weekends. Serving trays, like I said, are really straightforward. Titebond 3 or another waterproof or water-resistant glue is a huge recommendation because people will abuse these things over time. They will get saturated and expand and contract. Have a glue that can keep up with that. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. Let's keep it respectful and moving in the direction of building a community that loves to share tips and tricks. That's what I'm all about. Having a great time doing it. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. And if you really like it, consider subscribing. But most importantly, in this call to action, share this video with someone that you think might find this really helpful, useful, or fun to watch. As always, thank you guys for checking it out. We'll see you on the next one.